Hi, how are you all? Welcome. Today we have with us author Gavin, and he is the author of an amazing book, Crop Burner. And he has been writing and he has been lover of fantasy forever. And he has done great with his book. Not only with writing, his story is getting amazing reviews from all around. And I want to formally welcome Gavin here. And today we will have a good chit chat and you will learn a lot from his experience of becoming an awesome author. Welcome, Gavin.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. And like you say, yeah, I'm the author of Crop Burner. A little about me. Born and raised here in Reno, Nevada, in the United States. I was ill a lot as a child, so I spent a lot of my youth in the hospital. I had a great father who fed me fantasy books as a kid. I cut my teeth on David Eddings. Then, of course, I went to Tolkien, even science fiction to Highland, and kind of spent my entire life immersed in science fiction. I was lucky to have a teacher in high school who ran a science fiction fantasy class for English, who also continued to feed me fantasy and give me directions on things that I wasn't aware with. Chaucer and other authors that gave me a glimpse into where fantasy came from. I then, from high school, I was actually part of her book club all the way up until she passed away a couple of years ago. My life has been full of fantasy in every form. One of the things I enjoyed attending is WorldCon, which is the international fantasy fantasy and science fiction conventions. I actually met my wonderful wife there. And this last WorldCon that me and her went to back in San Jose a few years ago was kind of where my impetus to write Crop Burner came from. So.
Wonderful. That's great. And yes, so Gavin, tell us, when you started writing? Of course, you had a knack of writing since childhood, and I know you had a knack of reading fantasy book, but when did you actually formally and very seriously decided to become an author or a writer? And what was the thing that influenced you the most to do that?
So at the last WorldCon, one of the things I'm always looking for is a new author or something that's new that I hadn't seen before. And I think it was another author of the convention. I can't recall. I wish I could remember clearly. But I was talking to somebody at the convention and I was kind of complaining about I couldn't find what I wanted. I couldn't find the books that I was looking for. And the individual, he told me, he said, look, if you can't find it, then write it. And I said, oh, that's a good idea. And he said, you can't complain unless you've at least tried. And so I had an idea that originally started as an idea for a board game. It was like the magic system I had. It was an idea for a board game I had initially. So I came back home and I took that idea and I knew where I wanted the end of the book to go. And so I sat down and just started writing. And 4 years later, here I am with a published book. It's pretty amazing.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm sure it took 4 years for you to write. That's a lot of work, definitely. And I'm sure writing a book is not an easy task. There's a lot of, as we say, that you really don't know what it is. You only see the tip of the iceberg. You don't see how much of effort goes underneath. So what would be your advice, Gavin, for the aspiring authors? Because you have done it all. Like, your book is amazing and a big testament to your achievement. So what would be your advice for that aspiring authors out there?
I think the first thing is to find something you're passionate about. I don't care even how small or niche it is. My wife just recently picked up a book it's a fantasy book about a magician who's a cook. I mean, it's something very small and weird, right? So, I've talked to other people like, well, I've got an idea. And they're like, but it's a weird idea. And I'm always like, well, regardless of how weird or unique it is, as long as you have that passion for it, right? Once you have that's something to sink your teeth into. And then from there, just write. I mean, your first draft's going to suck. I mean, my first draft sucked. But once you have that down, you now have the groundwork to then start, molding and transforming to get the story that you're looking for out of that.
Perfect. That's very true. So what would be your advice, Kevin, when I keep hearing people saying that, hey, it's hard to move forward. I don't know how to move ahead. I don't know, I'm sitting with a plot forever. So what would be your advice? Like, how should they come out of that writer's block when it comes to moving ahead? Because to even publish a book, first and foremost thing, they need to finish. And majority of the time, what happens is people are unable to finish the draft itself. So what would be your advice for the writers and aspiring authors who are in that journey? What should they do? What did you do different?
So one of the things that I learned about my style of writing is like, I originally thought, that I needed to like outline everything in my book. Everything I had to have, like all my plot had to be outlined. And I really struggled with that until I talked to somebody and they said, well, look, you're a creative writer. You're a discovery writer, which means you just start at one point and you just write and you kind of try to write to where you need to go. But even then I would run into times where I would run the roadblocks and I couldn't figure out what I needed to do. So the way I did it is, I would take wherever my character was in the situation, and I would take another sheet, and I would start asking that character questions like, why are you in the situation? What got you there? What do you need out of the situation? Where you want to go? Even if it was something as simple as he was trying to get some food or something, like that. There's an impetus on why he wants what he needs. And if some reason, even if that didn't work for me, one of the things that I do is I take my characters and I'd put them in something completely different. Maybe I'd put them in even though they're fantasy, I might put them like an airport and they're trying to get to a plane on time, right? And then I would see how would that character react in these different situations? And that would help me, suss out what that character feels, what their intentions are. And then I would understand where they wanted. And then I'd be able to take those intentions and stuff and be able to figure out how those would then work into the story itself. And then I'll be able to get me to jump back into it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I can see you have great collections of games and great collections of books that I can see in the background. So as an author, what is your favorite book and why?
My favorite book. Wow. That's almost impossible to say. I mean, it changes a lot. I guess, I almost have to go back and say, The Lord of the Rings. It's the groundwork that all fantasy is built on. I know that's an easy answer that most authors probably give, but I mean, every other works kind of comes from that, or modern fantasy does. But it kind of changes a little bit, depending on my mood is a lot where my favorite book is. Lately I've been reading a lot of Neil Gaiman. It kind of depends, but if I had to pick one, it'd probably be that one.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what would be the most important lesson that you might have learned as an author, as you were on your journey to becoming a published author? What was the most important lesson that you would say you have learned?
I think the lessons, I don't even know if it's a lesson I learned, but maybe a lesson I got to see someone else learn is, because I guess I learned from it too, is as I wrote my book, I have one teenage boy and one almost teenage boy, and they got to see my creative process. They got to see everything from my early draft and my struggles with the different characters, and they got to hear bits and pieces of the story, and they got to listen to a lot of it. And I really think I really enjoyed being able to go through all that and show them, the perseverance, when overcoming all the different obstacles I came across, and now I'm proud to say that my youngest son, he's actually using my book as a book report for his class. And the thing that I had a conversation with him just a couple of days ago, he sat down and was asking me about the book, and he was actually asking me about real deep questions about the characters and why they're doing the things they were doing. And I was able to ask him questions back about what he thought about it. And I saw that I was able to actually teach him really good life lessons through my writing without having him actually have to go out there and experience them himself. So I really enjoyed that immensely, be able to share that experience with my boys.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. What can be better than that when your own child is referring to your book, and he must be super proud to see his dad's book in the physical form. And at the same time, he's learning too. And that's the beauty. So tell me, Gavin, what would be, I know you have come a long way and you it said like it took you 4 years and definitely you have grown from where you started and where you are today. But what would be that one thing, one piece of advice that you, if you can go back in time and you can tell your younger self or a younger writer within you, what would be that one advice that you will give to yourself if you can travel back?
I would probably tell myself to write. Like I didn't write as much as I wanted. I should have as a younger adult and younger kid. I I didn't have the faith in myself. I didn't think I had the talent it took to be a writer. And I think, I would go back and just tell them, look, write. You may not that book that you might write may not happen until you're older, but each book and you write and there's more experience you're going to build on, and you're going to be a better writer from that. So that's pretty much what I tell anyone. Just write. That's the only way you're going to be a better person or a better writer. So
perfect. That's amazing. And that's very true. It's like if we don't write and if we keep thinking and dwelling in our head what to write, there is so much of imagination that it needs to get streamlined and put on paper to even realize which one is not good and which one is good. So it's very important to write, guys. So please, whoever is watching this, if you are aspiring author, write. Okay, that's the most important thing. So I know you have been working full time, and how did you manage your time? Like, did you follow a schedule, or did you follow did you do some kind of a goal setting for yourself, or was that as I keep hearing people that you need perfect space and perfect environment to write. So what is your take on that? How did you schedule everything?
yeah, so having two boys and a wife and a full-time job, it makes it really difficult to try to make writing a part of your life. So what I did is at night when I went to bed, I'd bring my laptop to bed. Luckily my wife was fine with me tapping away at the keys next to her. So I would write late at night, and that was a time for me that worked best. I would spend the day usually thinking about where I was the night before, where my characters were, kind of getting myself an idea where I needed to go. And then that night I sat down and I write until sometimes if I ran a roadblock or I got to the point I was like, oh, it's getting too late and I need to get, I've got another job I've got to worry about the next morning, and then put it away. That's, where I did. I think if I had more time as a full-time, to write, it probably taken me a lot less time to write my book. But, it was, what I needed to do to kind of chip away at it until I finally finished it.
That's great. That's very important. So you follow the particular schedule every night to write.
Yeah.
So tell me, Gavin, when it is I'm sure you might have faced that when you are busy and for a certain period of time, you did not write. So how did you break that loop of and then returning back again to writing? Because I hear that a lot from writers and authors saying that we started writing, but then we stopped and we never got back. So what is your advice to them?
I kept a notebook. When I worked, I'd keep it on my desk, and then I would even keep it on my bed. So if I woke up in the night with an idea or a dream that I thought was really cool idea, I was always constantly writing ideas down. And then occasionally when I got stuck and in my book, or I felt like it just was too much work and I put too much effort to it, I'd go and write something else. I'd go and find another story, even if it was just most of the time short stories that would just help me get that flame of wanting to write again and to help stoke it. And once that was stoked up and burning again, to jump back into my book, because I didn't want to write my book when I was feeling down or wasn't feeling right, because I didn't want any of that to follow through with it and wherever I was at. So I would find ways to try to rekindle that spark and that I had for writing.
So would you say that it is okay to take break and not to force yourself to write when you're not feeling like writing?
Yeah, I would say that's fine. I just say just don't make a habit of it, or else you don't get back to it. And there were certain times during, my writing that I think that there were probably months, a month or even 2 months that would go by. I just kind of follow into that habit of like, I'd get up, go to work, take care of the kids, eat, same thing. And I would just kind of forget about my writing. But, I constantly try to keep that in the back of my mind. Like, where was my character at? Where were they going? And it makes it a little bit harder, when you get those gaps in it, because you're kind of like, a lot of times I have to go back and read what I had read and then say, okay, where was I at? Okay, now where was I wanted to go? So it's harder doing it that way. So, but that's, but yeah, I think it's okay if you do take breaks, just don't make it forever.
That's true. Don't make it forever. As long as like you're taking breaks, sometimes the breaks are very important too, because if you're not in the right mind, the creativity doesn't flow. And that time forcing oneself to write is sometimes a more big of a disaster than writing. So it's okay as long as you are getting back to writing. Taking break is not a problem. I know, Gavin, that writing a fantasy book, like any book which is a fiction book, and you have to, the most important element here is basically like, making your audience engage with the story, and like, so that they finish the book, because that's more important, and they feel like they are engrossed into the book throughout. And I'm sure with your book, that's definitely the case, because even the editor was so impressed with your book and with so many amazing reviews itself. So how did you manage that? I mean, I would love to know your secret there.
Honestly, I didn't know what it was until people started telling me what they enjoyed. And it was interesting because I felt writing the book that, one of my flaws in it, I kind of felt, was that I wasn't descriptive enough. But one of the big things everyone tells me is how descriptive the book is. And, and I've gone back and read it again, and I kind of see where, at the time I didn't see it, but now I can kind of see the bigger picture, that, that is kind of the key. You are bringing somebody into a world that, they don't know. I mean, that world exists in my head, right? I mean, so I've got to paint a picture for you in words, so that when you read them, you see the same thing that I'm seeing, right? I mean, you got to find the right words that I have to say in a way that when I say that word, that whatever you're thinking in your head might spark the same thought that I have. So I think that's, to me, is like the best way to write a fantasy or a nonfiction, is to be able to create that world in a way that's immersive, because someone can fall into that world and feel the character, and that character doesn't become something that's imaginary to them. It becomes like, almost like a friend or an enemy or a brother or a father. As soon as they start feeling that for the character, that's when you've grabbed your audience, and then you can then take them on the ride that you want to take them on.
True, very true. And as I said, Gavin, when it comes to writing and becoming an author, I know you already had this in you, like you were always an amazing writer. No one just becomes a writer just like in one day. You had it in you. But the thing is, how did becoming an author actually help you in your brand identity? Then, like, compared to when you weren't a published author?
Yeah, I think the best, at least in fiction, I mean, like a brand idea in a fiction area is usually it's the author, right? The author creates a number of books that people fall in love with and then fall in love with the author. I mean, being someone that was unpublished, right? It's you really don't have a brand, it was having to be able to create that book and be able to work with you and your team to, bring it together and come up with something that's polished and well, that brought everything that I wanted out to the front. Now I have something that's like a groundwork for my audience. They can read, they can kind of see where I am as an author and where I'm, the type of fantasy I'm into. So now as I come out with other books, they kind of know the adventures I might be taking them on, or they can kind of see the prose that I use. So that way I've now kind of laid the groundwork for my career going forward.
So now you know that people who are reading your book, they know that you are a refined writer. You write amazing books, and that really will help you lay out the path forward for all your upcoming books, for sure. So yeah, definitely that's definitely helpful. And once you become an author, people start treating you more seriously, and your advices are definitely going to be taken seriously. And people who are listening, I'm sure they are going to get a lot of great suggestion from Gavin himself, because he has done it all and he's doing great with his book so far. So, Gavin, picture this. Imagine you feel uninspired and you're in front of your computer for an hour and without even conquering any words. You're just like, trying to put words forward, but nothing's working. So, how do you get your creativity flowing in certain scenarios? I'm sure our viewers will agree to it, because this is more common than not.
Right. Yeah, like I said before, a lot of times I'll take my characters out of my book and I'll put them into another story, or I'll talk to them. My wife finds this really weird. I will open up a blank page, and I'll just talk to them back and forth. Like, I'll ask them questions about like how they feel in that situation, why they're doing what they're doing. If I'm having a hard time, if I'm in a spot where I'm having a hard time, trying to describe a certain character or a certain situation because I can't come to it, sometimes I'll go out and eat dinner and just watch people around me, because you always find people that might have that little argument. There's people that might be having a birthday, you've got the excitement on their face. And I'll kind of slowly kind of watch those people and see the way their mouth might move, or their eyes move, or their eyebrows move, or the way they might get closer on an intimate conversation. And then I'll be able to kind of pick those things apart. And then when I come back home, I'll be like, okay, I can picture that better. So now when I put it down, I can kind of see where I want that, where that expression is that I want you to kind of feel I'm trying to put forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's definitely like, once you do the self-talk and you understand from somebody else's, like even if it's your own self, but like it's like hearing from from someone else's perspective, it feels more natural and real, and that definitely will help you get out of your own block, or it helps you in the creativity of flow of creativity, I would say. And so tell me, Gavin, how, I'm sure you are now in the path to becoming, already you have done great things with your book, and seeing the reviews and good words that people are talking about your book. So what does a successful author look like?
I mean, I think every author, and wants to be able to write and be able to make a living off it, right? I want to be able to quit my job. I want to be able to write full time. But to me, I think it's beyond that. To be the way I would want to be successful, I could choose a successful path, without, any qualms. It would be, I would want to be able to travel the world and, find, go and experience things that, I'm not experiencing here. Go and see the things that I'm writing about in person and experience those. Be able to sit in a castle, in Scotland and, and write while overlooking a loch, or, write in the shadow of the Himalayas, go and do those things, right? To be able to take the world and find ways that I can then kind of use it to bring it back into my books.
Wow, that's great. That's an amazing idea. And see, you being so creative, I'm sure when you will be traveling the world, like your book is going to be even 10 times more amazing with all these ideas and creative flows, and like, infusing the reality into fantasy. Oh my God, I am personally waiting to read that. So what has been, I know you have been in the journey of like, writing your book, and it's been years that you have had many different steps. So any funny or memories that you might have throughout the way that, like, whenever you think about, you're like, oh my God, that gave me a good laugh?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like some of the ideas that I put in my book. So when my oldest son, when he was younger, we were watching TV one day and he said, Dad, I've got a question for you. And I said, why is that? And he goes, I see people kiss on TV. And I said, yeah. He goes, why are babies not being made right when they kiss? Right. And, it was like made me laugh really hard. And so like things like that, I was able to like, oh, that's a great like thing that a kid sees that doesn't understand that I actually used that and put that into my book. And he was reading it and he goes, Dad, I'm the one that did that, right? And he's like, oh, yeah. So he's like, it's funny seeing him going, I can't believe I said that. Now he's old enough to know that, of course, that's not the way babies are made anymore. But it's great to be able to have those like little experiences, to be able to be like, you kind of pepper in their kind of life experiences that, that kind of make the character feel more realistic.
That's amazing. And of course, he's going to cherish it forever because now it's there in the book, right? You can pick it up and say, oh my God, that is where it came from. That definitely is a nice memory for sure. So yeah, I mean, it was lovely knowing from you about your journey, Gavin. And I'm sure our viewers have gained a lot of ideas about being a writer and going forward and write the book. But I'm at the same time, I'm sure they want to grab a copy of your book. So if you could please let's talk a little bit about your book and tell them where they can get your book and how they can get your book.
All right. So it's actually called Crop Burner. It's the Tale of Fearn and the Deamhon. They can go for Amazon. They can go to https://mybook.to/crop burner. And that will, regardless of where you live, they'll take you to the proper Amazon site. It's also now available in bookstores. So if you go to your local bookstore and just ask for my book, they will be able to order it for you as well. And I prefer you go to the bookstores because I want everyone to, support your local booksellers because those are the ones that are going to, I don't know, they're the bread and butter, I think, of our community to help everybody. Because, books are what give us everything that we have. If you don't know it and you read in a book, then you know it. So yeah, I mean, that's my book. It's about a boy who, grows up in a town, a really small, very small village, where, they've had the magic system there has been used for ill and has caused great harm to his town. And he's born with this and told at a young age that he's got this power. So he's forced to live with the parents in the community that look down at him, that may not love him and care for him. So it's a book about, him trying to find his own way in the world, trying to find that love and that acceptance, and, the pitfalls he comes across. And of course, it's a journey as well, where he at the end, he manages to not only find himself, he's able to save others as well. So I think it's a great journey. I encourage everyone to read it. Of course, I like it. So thank you.
It was lovely having you today, and I'm sure our listeners have gained a lot of understanding about how to move forward and become a published author, because a lot of us dream about becoming an author, but few of us actually take that plunge and do it. And you did it. And yes, we all at Global Book Publishing are super, super proud of you and your accolades and with your book. Thank you for coming in today and sharing your experiences with us. I'm sure I have enjoyed, and I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed it too and taken good notes. So with that, thank you so much, Gavin, for coming in. And again, guys, the name of the book is Crop Burner. Go ahead, grab your copy today. My name is Sushmita, and I will talk to you guys very soon. And until then, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.